Well, the first thing I should say is that it's not true that people believe I'm an accomplished diplomat. I've just been told by one of the officials in the former department I was minister of, that they were in a meeting with officials from the United States of America, and the officials were expressing sincere relief that they no longer have to deal with Naledi Pandor. So it's not true. It's not quite true that I'm a good diplomat. In fact, even the respected publication, The Economist, recently wrote that those who worked as colleagues to Pandor say she was an activist, she's arrogant, she's angry, and didn't conduct herself in a diplomatic manner. Now, of course, they don't understand that when you're engaged in struggle, diplomacy is not always very useful. Let me thank you all, really, for the kind reception that I have received. I'm not deserving of all the wonderful accolades, because I was a mere worker carrying out the instructions of my employer, the President of South Africa. And so it is the government of South Africa and the people of South Africa who deserve the accolades that allow me to begin, and I hope I'm not going to bore you, because I understand some of you watch something called YouTube. I must say, I've been traveling a little bit with Imam here, and I'm just impressed at how technologically competent Imam Mujahid is. But anyway, they tell me there's something called YouTube, and it follows me, or I follow it, I don't know. So everybody listens to what I say, and it may be that I do repeat a lot, but I hope I won't bore you or tire you by any means. So allow me to begin. The President of Justice for All, Imam Mujahid, the Chairman of Justice for All Canada, the CEO, rather, of Justice for All Canada, executive members of JFA, distinguished guests, leaders of civil organizations, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And a warm good evening to you all. I wish to thank the executive members of the Canada branch of Justice for All for inviting me to address you this evening. I feel humbled and honored that so many of you have been kind enough to come to this event and even to stay and listen to me. I thought it useful tonight to reflect on the current very constrained geopolitical context and the strain that this places on the full enjoyment of freedom, justice, and human rights for so many in the globe. We are all living, as you know, in an extremely troubling and complex global environment, fueled with tension, violence, and decreasing global cooperation. This environment, in my view, is a direct consequence of multiple conflicts across the globe and of the failure of the world's leaders to focus on social change rather than narrow geopolitical ambitions. The failure has led to a growing dissatisfaction among poor and marginalized communities that are angered by poverty, by inequality, and by joblessness. Billions in our world feel they no longer matter, and they're losing faith in democracy. Added to this are the decades-long fueling of racism, of Islamophobia, of prejudice, and of ethnic chauvinism. All these inadequacies in social cohesion have ramped up negative attitudes and stressed the world hugely. We see this in increased community violence, in ongoing racism, in hatred, and in inequality for women. A larger part of the reasons for this scenario lie in the dominant economic, military, and political power of Europe, the United States of America, and their allies. These powers have not used their powerful status to promote and create global unity of purpose, and have rather used their might to spread and strengthen their spheres of influence in their own selfish interests. They have proven absent from global collaboration for good, as is seen in the failure to achieve all the sustainable development goals and to reduce the debt burden of developing countries. There are many strategic countries of the South that have attempted to resist the dominant unipolarity of the North and sought to create a multipolar world in which more countries and political ideologies have influence. Even this has been contested, as we see in trade wars between China, Europe, and America, or as we see in unfair trade barriers imposed on African and Latin American countries. Nations striving for change have had to confront their struggle and the impact of geopolitics simultaneously. So this context is not easy, particularly if you're poor. All of you are aware that in the first decade of this 21st century, it seemed that we were going to have an Africa which would celebrate the 21st century as its century, with many countries at the start of the century achieving high levels of growth, beginning to entrench democracy, and focusing very clearly on development objectives. And yet, today, 2 decades into the 21st century, Africa now has multiple conflicts, repeated coups, and weak democratic practices. Much of this is linked to corrupt African leaders and their negative relations with external forces that seek wealth from and control of Africa's rich mineral resources. My country, South Africa, is a newly emerging democracy and a modest middle-income economy. We are celebrating just 30 years of democracy this year. We're an infant in democracy. We exercise our foreign policy in this context of competition for influence and dominance. All of you are aware of our own struggle against apartheid. Apartheid, I don't have to repeat to you, was an inhumane state policy that sought to diminish and deny the human dignity of Black people in our country and in our region, Southern Africa, largely for the economic benefit of our oppressors and their collaborators. Fortunately, due to a large force of incredible leaders and human rights activists, our struggle resulted in a legacy that seeks to entrench a human rights culture in South Africa, and in the globe. And we also have a determination to affirm the innate human dignity of all persons. This is our democratic character. This, though, is the bold ambition of democratic South Africa. We are still far from it, but it remains our objective. So, our history of struggle for freedom has resulted in a country that is sometimes bolder than expected. We are cheeky people. A country that seeks development and peace rather than war, and that openly fights for the rights of all who face the continuing burden of colonial oppression. The role of South Africa in supporting the peaceful resolution of conflicts is not always acknowledged by analysts. Our President Nelson Mandela played a leading role in ensuring a peaceful transition in South Africa. But he and President Julius Nyerere of Tanzania jointly led and supported negotiations in Burundi to stop a genocidal civil war that would have mirrored the tragedy of the Rwanda genocide. Our former President Thabo Mbeki led the negotiations between warring groups of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and President Zuma assisted in ending a further breach in Burundi, and our current President Ramaphosa facilitated. The microphone has had enough. The battery. That's good organization, well done. So our current President, Ramaphosa, facilitated the Irish peace process, along with Rose Mayer, who was a negotiator with him when we were negotiating the end of apartheid. He also played a role in the transition to peace and security of the Kingdom of Lesotho. And our late former Deputy Minister of International Relations, Comrade Ibrahim, played a key role in attempting to bring peace to Sri Lanka and in mediating in Kosovo, Madagascar, and Central African Republic. So this is South Africa's role in seeking peace. It is this history of seeking peace and reconciliation that has led to South Africa actively playing a role in ending the war against Palestine and the war between Russia and Ukraine. Many of my friends in the diplomatic space criticize me and say, you are very robust on Palestine, but you're not robust about Ukraine. And I say, well, if you give Palestine NATO arms, I'll be robust. Yeah! So you might be wondering tonight, as I detail this geopolitical context, as to what is its relevance to this evening. I place it before us because I think it is vital that all of us understand the very challenging circumstances in which you and I strive to support the people of Palestine. Remember, all campaigns and activist work that you offer support, as it is the people of Palestine who must eventually determine their fate. As I have reminded some of my more important friends, we must work in close solidarity with all the people of Palestine, and we must not seek to impose our choices on who should govern them or what form of governance or democratic system they should have. That is their decision. I have found that there is great curiosity in many organizations and institutions about the steadfast and bold support of South Africa's government for the just cause for freedom, democracy, and human rights for the people of Palestine. Many people ask me, why should South Africa care? The explanation, ladies and gentlemen, lies in South Africa's own long struggle for freedom, which was a national struggle involving a large proportion of our population across all races, faiths, and classes. South Africans understand apartheid keenly. They know its characteristics, and they see it visibly in Israel's actions in Palestine. Our freedom struggle against apartheid was long, painful, and difficult. And we work hard to build alliances to secure united action on issues we are concerned about. We should meet our public representatives in all our countries and get their commitment to matters that concern us as communities. Discussions on UN reform have been underway for more than a decade in the United Nations with no concrete outcomes. We should seek focus on ensuring our public representatives achieve concrete results. It is well known that the United Nations should have a peace enforcement capacity if innocent civilians are to be protected from harm. We must get commitment to such mechanisms. Almost every tenet of international law has been breached in the war against Palestinians. Palestinians are occupied and dispossessed. War crimes of intention to murder, of starvation, of destruction of property, of illegal detention, of murder and ethnic cleansing have all been publicly stated, promoted, and carried out by leaders of Israel and experienced by the Palestinian people. All of these are war crimes described in international law and international humanitarian law instruments. It is for these reasons that we approached the International Court of Justice, alleging our belief that Israel is committing genocide in Palestine. We wanted the highest court in the globe to prosecute this matter and to allow for public scrutiny of the genocidal actions of Israel. We were boldly testing international law and exposing the cruel impunity Israel has enjoyed for more than 7 decades. While the plight of the Palestinian people is a major concern for all humanity, we need to pay equal attention to the terrible civil war underway in Sudan, to the conflicts in the Sahel, to the instability in Libya, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and in Mozambique. All of these conflicts exact a terrible toll on innocent civilians, on humanitarian organizations, on health professionals, and others who seek to assist. This is largely due to lack of respect for international law and humanitarian law. It has become clear that we need vigorous campaigns for peace and security and active commitment from the most powerful nations that they will ensure international law is respected in practice. Organizations such as JFA and other organs of civil society can play critical roles in our countries by calling on all leaders to respect international law and end all forms of oppression. We need to make foreign policy central to our political loyalty and not peripheral, as is the case today. We, as the government of South Africa, were very clear in our belief that global legal frameworks are important multilateral instruments for the protection of civilians and public institutions. Israel, the perpetrator of acts that we believe to be genocidal, had failed to act in terms of its legal commitment to the Convention on the Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. This, despite Israel being one of the first signatories to the Convention when it was first drafted. Shame on them indeed. The Convention is an important human rights law and links very well to my country's foreign policy commitment to human rights. Conventions, ladies and gentlemen, and treaties matter and should be implemented fully by all nations. Increased attention to acting equitably in terms of international law could help create a better world. I know some of you don't like the United Nations, but we believe it must remain the premier global multilateral institution because the alternative is too awful to contemplate. Our human rights-oriented posture has been carried through into our Constitution and the Bill of Rights within it, and into every socio-economic domain in our country. This orientation has served as a critical affirmation of our goal to ensure expanded access to all political, social, and economic rights for all our people. Our Constitution is a foundation for this focus. And even though we have had many faults and missteps in our 30 years of democracy, our people do confirm that they've begun to experience the benefits of freedom and to appreciate that freedom, justice, and democracy are valuable assets for our society. I believe the people gathered in this room can create similar opportunities for the people of Palestine, and that they can even assist Israeli citizens to appreciate the true value of freedom. The Muslim community worldwide has taken a stand actively in support of Palestine and has galvanized world attention. We need to use this inflection point effectively by uniting across all faiths, by ensuring the true character of the Palestinian struggle is understood as a fight for freedom and human dignity for all people, and not only for Muslim people. So while the struggle and catastrophe of Palestine is our greatest concern at this moment, let us recall too the oppression of the people of Western Sahara, of communities in northern Mozambique, and as I mentioned earlier, our Libyan brothers and sisters. I believe that the organizations present here today have an opportunity to shape a new global orientation, one that seeks the good for all rather than good for a selfish few. I know many people believe they can't do much. I also thought I couldn't do much, but God, I'm amazed as a servant of my government what I've been able to reach out to. So you too can make a difference. In conclusion, I wish to say the objective of rights for all, and listen to this, rights even for the oppressor, was shaped by our anti-apartheid struggle. You see, you can't have an objective of rights only for the oppressed, because then it means you're going to become an oppressor. Freedom and justice mean freedom and justice for all. And unfortunately, part of your obligation is to free the oppressor from his cruel acts, not to join him. Of rights for all, even our former oppressors, was shaped by our anti-apartheid struggle, and it was incorporated into our legal instruments of freedom. This influences our policies today and forms the bedrock of the society we hope to create. It is that vision that led to us speaking of free South Africa as a country united in her diversity. Because we knew our biggest challenge would be social cohesion and socio-economic change. And so we had to unite as a people, all South Africans, and not some South Africans. So the objective of our approach to the International Court of Justice is to seek an end to the harm to Palestinian people, to assert the importance of international law, and to end impunity of leaders and their powerful allies. We need many more countries and organizations to support this important case and the approach we have adopted. And we need many more in our globe to support the achievement of self-determination, justice, and human dignity for the people of Palestine. I wish to close by thanking you for your presence here this evening, by thanking you for all that you are doing for the people of Palestine, and by saying to you, telling you something I've been telling friends recently. When my mom was very ill in hospital one day, she pulled me to her mouth. She wanted to talk to me. And she said to me, Naledi, when we were young, we used to sing freedom in our lifetime. We sang it all the time as we struggled, but we didn't always believe it. And she said, I'm so happy I saw freedom in my lifetime. I believe the people of